I would like to welcome a person. This is a great honor for us to have him here. He's been having a dream for a long time, a Babel dream, consisting in making any video content accessible to any human beings in any possible language all over the world. Michael Smollens from .sub, please join us on the stage.
So we leave you, start your keynote, and have a nice day, everybody, and we'll see each other later. Please.
Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Je parle un petit français, je prends le français.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I work today at Van Dijk, and today I will have a speech in English.
Okay.
Just position that for you. Okay.
What I'd like to do is to talk about what's possible. And we're going to be talking about big dreams. And Europe has 27 languages. It's such a pleasure to be in a place where people understand every day the fact that they are confronting other languages. In the United States, everyone thinks everyone either speaks English or should speak English. That is very far from the truth. Nelson Mandela said, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, it talks to his head. If you talk to him in his own language, it talks to his heart. Each of us, when they're creating stories, motivation, learning, training, wants to speak to people's heart. You want to engage your audience. There's 7.2 billion people on the planet that speak 6,800 languages. And video, the subject of this conference, is going to be representing 85% of all internet bandwidth in 2018. In the world today, 26% of all adults are illiterate. So speaking to them in video is one way to communicate, and of those illiterate people, 2/3 of them are women. There's a huge amount of work that needs to go on with gender equality. So my life is dedicated to language-enabling media, language-enabling video. When you create video in Europe, it can be easily, quickly, and inexpensively made in European languages before you create the budget. And this is what we should be talking about. Mr. Willy Brandt, from your neighbor in Germany, said, if I'm speaking to you, if I'm selling to you, I speak your language. If I'm buying, dann müssen Sie Deutsch sprechen. It's very important to speak other languages. Just very, very quickly, because I have a few minutes. .sub, a company which is my 9th startup. I thought it was my last startup. I've started 3 others since then. We do business with a lot of the major brands in the world, as you can see. How did I get here? Very, very quickly. When I was 23 years old, I started doing business in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, had 4,000 employees. Fast forward to the first American in Mexico before NAFTA, first American in Hungary, Azerbaijan, Jordan. I had factories all over the world employing thousands of people making T-shirts. And in 2004, I came up with the aha moment, or the lightning bolt, when I saw the movie Fahrenheit 9/11. When I left that movie, which was about trying to change the outcome of presidential election with Mr. Bush and Mr. Kerry, I said, wow, how in the world can one film in English maybe changes the outcome of a US presidential election? Maybe I can create a technology to do that in the world. And for all of you entrepreneurs in the audience, I had all of the perfect requirements to do this business. I knew nothing about technology, I knew nothing about film, I knew nothing about language, and I knew nothing about translation. And because I knew nothing about it, I was trying to solve a major problem in the world. How do you get 7 billion people to connect with each other and make them understand after people were flying planes into the World Trade Center. Obviously, there's a major bit of communication problem. So what I've been asked to do is to preface a panel about audience engagement. And I want to show you some real live examples of what global audiences did on their own. This is a 2-hour documentary film called The Zeitgeist Addendum. It was put on our site, .sub, which has a couple minutes. It's not a site like YouTube or Vimeo or Dailymotion. It just has people who want to translate. And it is in English. It has just coincidentally been viewed 1.1 million times. And if you take a look at the languages in which it was viewed 87% of the time in languages other than English, because it could be. So if you think about this, a film, only 13% of the views were in the language in which it was made. How many of you think about that? You could have an order of magnitude more views in other languages if you thought about it. Here's something very, very close to Europe. Several years ago, a German television station did an expose about a scandal in Brussels where EU members were being paid to go to Parliament in EU, and as you can see, they did not show up. So it was a very short video in German on TV in Germany that got very, very little viewing. Once again, the market started subtitling it in Czech. And then it went into Slovakian, German, French, and other languages virally. No predetermined notions. And in 4 months, that video was viewed 3.3 million times and generated $11,000 in Google AdSense revenue. So if you think about it, a short video in its native language, German, went nowhere. But when neighboring countries saw it on their own using our technology, found interest in it, it got 3.3 million views and generated $11,000 of revenue in 4 months. If you multiply that times the hundreds of thousands of videos, there's an opportunity for a huge amount of global impact and a huge amount of revenue that no one in this room is thinking about. Now, I think if you talk about why do people volunteer and do things on the web, in social media, in Twitter, in Facebook, in Instagram, and all of the new emerging things. They're human beings, and they are looking for 2 things from their volunteer work online, tweeting. They're looking for what I call the 2 R's, recognition and reward. Now, a company that you very well know of called Adobe, one of the major large technology company in the world, has a site called Adobe TV, has 16,000 videos, and it enables its audience to do the subtitling in multiple languages on its own. Here's the Adobe TV site. It has a picture of the leading translators, and if you can take a look at this, the leading translator spent 270 to 400 hours of their time getting involved because they wanted to. And they earned Adobe TV points, so you can create a virtual gamification currency to reward your fans and your loyal people. How would global healthcare knowledge change if big pharmaceutical companies could pay part of medical school students' tuition to encourage them to translate important medical videos in local languages? All of you know about SEO. Here, with the interactive transcript, you can read 5 times as fast as you can watch a video. So if you have a transcript in a multiple language, in addition to title and metadata, you can do text-based search. So you can find videos, locate videos, and serve up ads and videos and views, order of magnitudes faster in multiple languages. I always say if a picture is worth 1,000 words, how many words is a video worth? This is a partnership we have with Publicis Healthcare in the healthcare space. It's the world's first multilingual video portal in healthcare and pharmaceutical. I'd like to close with something that's very near and dear to your heart. When you make Hollywood films, it costs about $1 million per minute. If you're making broadcast television, $250,000 to $750,000, agency branding, and value-added content, with most of the people in this room are making, where you have a script writer, a cameraman, a lighting man, an audio man, and an editor. However you cut the cookie, it takes about $2,000 to $5,000 per video minute to have that finished video. If you spent 1.5% to 3.5% in addition before you started, you could have that video professionally done in 5 European languages of your choice. If you spent 3 to 9%, you could have that video made in 12 languages, representing 85% of the internet-connected world. Think about that. Instead of making your media, spending and overspending your budget, and then having to raise other money to do it, if you built it into your budget, which would be less than the coffee and bagels on your cart when you're shooting the film, you could have an order of magnitude. So what I'm saying is that's what it is, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Michael, please, would you join us for the panel now? You can sit wherever you want. And je vais passer en français, excusez-moi. Ça sera plus simple.
And I will continue in French. And for the first panel, I will call the following participants. They have a very diverse profiles, and they had the opportunity to reach various audiences using various media and supports. Together with Michael, I call David Dufresne. You already saw him once. Bastien Carpier, who's a chair directing the customer relationship at the Ankama studio. And Michal Sikora is co-founder of the social entertainment website Demotivateur. You probably saw a few links to this site on the social networks. Domenico Della Porta will be moderating this panel. He's in charge of cross-media at Wallimage.
Bonjour.
Hi, my name's Domenico. I wear several caps. I'm going to be moderator on audience engagement. Okay, how's this going to work? It's going to be an open discussion with our panelists. When I speak to Mike, it'll be in English, so if you don't understand, put your headsets on. The basic idea is that you can intervene at any time. You can ask questions, so they will come. Your questions will come in between my questions. Then I will sew the thread back into the weave to make sure that we carry on with our discussion. I can answer questions as well. The basic idea is to challenge our panelists. They're used to these debates. They're not here to promote their ideas solely. They're here also to answer any questions you may have. So when we're talking about audience engagement, we know that audiences are pretty lazy, passive, and therefore getting them out of their seats, it requires a bit of effort. David, as you said, now connecting to the internet is immediate, so there's no more the problem of the modem, getting over the modem. Access to internet is easier. So when you're working on your various projects, have you thought about your target audiences? Are they worked into the beginning of your plan? Right. Yes. I think it's at the heart of our concerns. Firstly, in terms of production, one of my main strengths, or one of the main strengths of interactivity, is participation, and therefore the user sits at the heart of our work. I'll explain later on how we did with For Make Money. The idea was to recreate a cinema atmosphere. So you're sitting in a room, you don't know who's sitting next to you, but we're all going to share a common moment, common emotions, and that is really central to my work. I wouldn't say that audiences are lazy, although we can come back to that later. I think it's us who are lazy. We're used to just, clicking our fingers and people just turning up. Saturday evening, there's a film sitting. Thursday evening is another special showing. So we're used to these sort of habits, but it's up to us to recreate the cinema room, the cinema, and recreate the idea of this meeting point, this rendezvous at the cinema. So the audience always sits, as I said before, at the core of my work, whether I'm working with the INF or the Arte. They really are battle axes, battle machines. And with McMoney, what we did was to plan how we're going to launch to market a year ahead of time. Today, yes, we don't have connecting to the internet as a problem, but it means also that audiences are drawn in all directions, and so we have to catch the audience's attention when the project is being launched. That's the challenge. It's up to us. So now it's we who have to be proactive, because the audiences are not passive. They're choosing. Okay, so that means that you have to start targeting your audience a year ahead with teasers and trailers, etc. But not everybody has the means to do that kind of thing. All of this requires money, but we've got people here like Demotivator. You started from scratch, from nothing. And today, you're at the head of 40 million users on a monthly basis. What you do is publish content in the form of a kind of blog. Yeah. We are basically a news unveiling site. We will basically introduce scoops that we think will be of interest to our users. So we want to motivate internet users to read what we're posting on our blog. Did you feel that there was a kind of a snowball effect, that people really did buy into what you were doing? Okay, it wasn't immediate. It was a long-haul work. There was a lot of experimentation. We are working always on an experimental basis. We're always testing new ways of creating content, showing content, displaying content, page setting, etc. We're always trying different methods. And obviously trying out different experiments in terms of reading habits, etc., and trying to tap into different interests and needs and desires of users. And so we adapt to whatever those evolving desires are. So how would you describe your target audience? For McMoney, that's quite a niche market, but like a website, Demotivator or Ankama or Dotsub. Dotsub perhaps...
the people that are providing the translations are professionals, at least in their specific field of interest. Est-ce que c'est quelque chose que vous qualifiez aujourd'hui?
Is it something that you would... are you going to use special promotional channels for this niche market, or are you talking about internet as a completely open field and anybody can come at any time and come and look at my content? Ted. Okay, to answer your question, Ankama, we are a video game producer. It's quite a specialized market targeting specialized audiences. Our work centers around a very specific target audience, but we are trying to open up our work as much as possible. We have active players. We've got animated work that is addressing these target audiences, but now we're aiming a little bit further afield of using specialized websites on video games. We also have transmedia devices as well, trying to tap into new target audience, building bridges, if you like. So what are you saying when you're targeting specialized audiences? Who are you talking to? Are you still working on an age group basis? Well, it's more habits, actually, and behavior that we're targeting, i.e. how people, we're by a bunch of how people use our users. So, for example, we've got hardcore players. We've got perhaps occasional players who come and go. And then, so we've got specific user profiles, and we target those using different means. So, for example, a new player, we're going to take them by the hand. We're going to accompany them as they discover the game with tutorials and explanatory videos. Whereas a hardcore player, they already know all the little shortcuts, etc. So we're going to introduce them all the little sort of tricks of the trade. As Michael was explaining earlier on about recognition and reward, what Michael was saying, again, we've got these mega players, so we're going to promote the games that they're currently engaged in, and then we're going to give them new tricks of the trade for these games, and we're going to try and build bridges between the different audiences. Michael.
Let me just sort of add a comment with our experience. Many of you have heard of the Pareto rule, 80-20. 80% of one's revenue is coming from 20% of your customers. In the internet, there's a new rule that has been created, 90,9,1, the 90-9-1 rule. 90% of people that are looking at a website are what we call browsers, like cattle grazing in a field. 9% of them are users. They somehow become engaged with the content, click and do things, but generally, and it's pretty accurate, only 1% of the people that come to the site are what are called power users. And so from a branding point of view and from a consumption point of view, if you realize that you're only going to get 1% of the people to be power users, those are the people that you want to really engage. We say they're going to be blogging, tweeting, posting on Instagram, and really promoting your product.
I really like this 1% rule. I think it might be seen as pessimistic, but I think it's necessary to point out that in a same day, you can be both part of the 9%, the 90%, or the 1% group, depending on how you feel, what the weather's like, and what you want to do that day. And I think that's what's interesting in this game. This is the profile fluctuates as well. Now, obviously, we're trying to target the 1%, and this is quite difficult sometimes to make producers and broadcasters understand that we're going to bundle all our efforts into that 1%. Now, talking about niche markets, I think we should be quite clear on something. Everything has become a niche market. Previously, recently, Le Monde, the broadsheet newspaper in France, published a few figures. So 60 million circulation in France. So this is 60,000 circulation in France, with 90,000 if you take into account overseas distribution and airplanes, which is ridiculous compared to a few years ago. For Libération, another newspaper, it's 25,000 per day, whereas before, when I was working, it was 50,000 per day in just Paris. And then we've got TF1, French television. They're gaining, they've also lost viewing figures. So there's no, it's not a bad thing to see this happening, because it means that it's making room for other niche markets. And therefore, I think that it's an opportunity to seize. We're moving away from mass media, and now we're looking at the opportunity to promote creativity. So, for example, that doesn't prevent, for example, having a blockbuster with a massively successful game with 1 million followers. But what I'm saying is, it's almost as if saying niche market is a sorry thing. But I don't think niche market per se is a bad thing, and I think we should recognize that, because I don't want a niche market to have a negative connotation. Okay, so everybody can become a publisher because they've got Facebook profiles, they've got Twitter accounts, etc. Now, I'm thinking about when you're launching a crowdfunding initiative on Facebook, or you've got articles on your blog, or you've got calls for translation on WhatsApp. Now, I remember on Pleasant Valley there was a forum where you could go and say what you wanted to say. How do you manage all of these different inputs? I know that sometimes web users can be really kind of like fanatical about a particular point, or obsessed. How do you manage these sort of like peaks in activity or crises or points? For example, when you're on a thing like McMoney. Okay, well, I'll answer for Anchorman. We had something on Kickstarter, which was to find translators for a series. We had a whole reward system set up. So depending on the amount that was proposed, we would give a reward. And today we've got the highest buy-in rate from users. So users are investing in a brand, they're investing in a product that they like, that they want to see completed, their projects that they want to see finalized. And the slightest delay, the slight problem in communication then obviously flies back in our face. So what we've done is we have community managers who are managing these startup projects. So basically every time there's a question, we've got people there to reassure users, to reassure contributors. We've also set up a whole communication program covering major steps in the work. We've got things behind the scenes as well. So we have set up a whole sort of like backup structure in order to support all of this work. Just one remark. Sometimes, for example, a user will ask a question. It might not seem very relevant at the time, but it's important to give as much attention to them as they are given to us because they are helping us build our project. Michael.
And it's a very good point about Kickstarter. If you take a look about crowdfunding, there's been numerous studies with Kickstarter and Indiegogo that they have 500 to 1,000% increase in funding if there is a relevant video on the request. So as opposed to a text-based or images and photos, if someone takes the time to make a video and communicate.
Close to the microphone.
If someone takes the time to make a video and integrate that with a Kickstarter or Indiegogo campaign, you can get 5 to 10 times the amount of funding. And then obviously, with what my passion is about, if you enable that to be in local languages, you can really connect emotionally with people to get them to write more checks and donate more money.
Alors, il n'y a personne qui représente une plateforme de crowdfunding ici, mais c'est vrai qu'il y a un engagement.
Okay, well, there is nobody here from crowdfunding, but it is very important for kickstarting these young projects. And I think with young projects, it's very much a personal thing. Now, with Indigo and Kickstarter, they have their own communities, and there are people who regularly go and surf these websites who are looking to invest in projects for potential products. So with you, you have a community that you're managing. And Anchorman, you also have communities.
Belongs to .sub. What you provide is a tool, and then this tool is given to the people that have to use it to engage their own community. Is that right?
Well, the tool, it's an enabling. Like Microsoft Word is an enabling technology, and Bill Gates doesn't determine what is written on a Word document, whether it's grammar or spelling or it's a Nobel Prize. Our tool is available for large companies or small nonprofits or individual makers to enable their media in video format to be easily, quickly, and inexpensively made available in multiple languages, with the crowd or with professionals or with both.
Et David, est-ce que vous avez...
Okay, David. Do you have a community which is yours, or is there one for each project? With your fiction producers, do you have fans that follow you from different series to series? We have millions of followers. What are you talking about? Well, I don't know, to be fair. Maybe. Well, actually, I think that would be quite interesting data to measure. Well, what I can say is that today, I would say in our little niche market of interactive documentaries, there are names that we keep seeing popping up, whether it be the name of a producer. For example, a UPN project will be presented later on. Maybe we might get a bunch of followers immediately, or perhaps on Arte. It's become an incredible web brand from that point of view. And then personally speaking, I don't think I can answer that. What I can say from my point of view with regards to the community and what you said earlier on, and there I completely agree with what you said, I think the least you can do when you open a dialogue or you open a forum is to answer, is to offer an answer. I mean, it's the basics in politeness. I would say that any reaction, is worthy of a response. Then obviously moderating before or afterwards, what we do count on the communities to self-regulate themselves. But obviously, success calls success, and sometimes it becomes more expensive to manage that. So, for example, over a period of 5 years, projects like Prison Valley, I moderated, and I still moderate this on a volunteer basis. I'll probably do it until I die. And there, so I'm answering your question. But I just love it. You know, somebody writes to me on this project that dates 5 years ago. I'm really excited about it. Now, when we did For McMoney, we decided that that work or that moderation should be a paid position. So I can tell you how that role became a game master. Obviously, our experience is making our role, our positions, our profession change. And today, I would say that in our projects, it's like a moderator almost becomes like the producer who talks to the audience after it's been screened for the first time. Okay, on the other hand, it's a little bit your work of art. Did I not answer your question to your satisfaction? No, I'm not saying that. So in Demotivator, is it the authors of the articles who answer the questions, or do you have somebody who is responsible for answering questions on forums? Now, obviously, the authors, the producers are interested in what people are writing about what they've done, and they're thinking about how they can improve their work. But when we've got 40 million visitors per month, it's it's vastly complex to try and manage all of that. So we have a community manager. He is in charge. Okay, we're talking about massive communities here. On Facebook, you've got over 1 million people. Ankara, I think it's over 600,000 people. Well, in your case, it's different per project. Do you have Facebook pages or accounts for each project? For McMoney, we didn't make one. We didn't make one. Our users made it. Oh, I see. Okay, well, that tells us a little bit about the buy-in to your project. Okay, I'm going to hand the floor to the audience, and then we can come back to the thread of our discussion. But I'd like to talk about wishful thinking, which is because we're always saying that we are going to launch a series, users are going to buy in, but sometimes we get disappointed because obviously the public don't necessarily react in the way we want them to or we expect them to. So what happens if a project gets no reaction? Is it because there's a problem with a project? Usually you can see if a project has so-called failed, if there is no participation, if no community is created, or perhaps you set up a crowdfunding site and nobody buys in. It's a little bit a blot on the landscape, so to speak. I'm thinking of those kinds of problems. Can you perhaps tell us a little bit about how you've reacted to that kind of situation? What have you done, and have you had that kind of problem before? Michael?
Well, we don't come to us and say, we'd like to use your crowd, or we'd like to make viral media. We have hundreds of thousands or millions of people, but they aren't our crowd. Those are the crowd of the people who are creating the content.
You have no access to them at all?
No, we have their names, but we don't violate our terms of use, and we don't go out and try to use those.
You don't send newsletters, nothing?
We have a monthly newsletter that goes out to over 100,000 people and talk about things, but we particularly don't try to encourage the use because that's not our crowd. We have an enabling technology, and we feel very morally and ethically it would be violating, but I think I've learned over the years, and this was a big surprise to me, by far and away, the largest, most passionate audiences across all media categories that we're working with are religion and spirituality. Because they all want to proselytize, they want to tell everybody, and they're very strongly. So we have an Indian spiritual mystic that many of you might know of called Osho.
Who knows Osho? Yeah, there's one spiritual guy there.
Okay, they have 100 million followers around the world, and they have 10,000 hours of media. So those are the people that are very, very, very passionate, and if someone is making a film, that has nothing to do with any of the other crowds.
Can everyone maybe speak about that?
okay, in terms of expectation, reaction from the public, when you've got an idea in your head and you think, oh yeah, this is going to be an absolute smash hit, and then it turns out to be a complete flop, what do? It happens to us all the time. We do try to cut the number of flops that we have, and we do try to engage the audience as much as possible. Yeah, our audiences regularly send us ideas through email. What? Like little camels and sweet cats. I've seen a lot of that on your website. Yeah, we do have quite a lot. Well, we do have a lot of entertainment and news. It's both. We, at one point when the blog began, people were actually content creators. That was how the website began. And that now we've got an editor team and we create content, so it's slightly changed. It's changed slightly. But people still continue sending us suggestions and proposals and ideas. Now, to be quite clear, we have our editor team, and then from a technological point of view, we've got people who detect the content that's working the best, sort of like trawling the net to see what's working the best. So you're cheating then. Well, we're just keeping an eye on what's going on the web, and seeing what. Do you sell that technology for trawling the net? Okay, so basically this is a call to everybody to go and pirate them. You've got to go and jump onto their sandbank and pirate what they have. Well, what we have is we've got a couple of hot topics, and we can detect those. So, for example, very topical subjects, fun subjects. One of our big things is a society, family, couples, relationships. We try to find topics that are an inspiration and have a lot of emotional content as well. And Kama, I know you've got fan communities that have quite strong reactions. I remember Modafukaza, which was supposed to have become a film, and then nothing happened. And I think I posted a few spiteful comments on your website as well. I remember that. Is it something that do you have a strategy to counter that kind of thing? Okay, just coming back to buy-in and participation, audience engagement, etc. Well, I'm going to repeat what I said before. There's this idea of reward. There has to be a reward, but it's not the only thing that counts. What kind of thing, what can you reward people with if you've got 600,000 fans on Facebook? Well, as we were saying a minute ago, they're little niche pocket communities, and if we use fan recommendations or listen to fan recommendations, we are in contact with a number of ambassadors or influential figures in the community. So, for example, they want to have something featured in a game. It might be an idea to emphasize that a bit more, or it would be nice to have a video. Could you give us a little boost, a video or something like that? So basically, we promote some user content. We do that. And then there are rewards that vary. So some communities have creative members. So we'll have fan art competitions. Or within the community, there might be users who are power users, hardcore users. So we have challenges for that as well. Who can finish the biggest number of quests, etc., for a dungeon. So we have specific challenges. So you not only work on video games, but you also work with comics, etc. And then there's also transmedia.
Donc, par exemple, pour le film.
For example, for the movie Dofus, we offered to take in charge the gamers community, arguing that these are our gamers and that they can help us and that we can foster them so that they talk about the film and they get involved into the movie. So we have groups of gamers who gather within the game, and we organized a contest based on those leagues and based on the level of popularity. So we started with this engagement setting. We also managed to have give them the opportunity to appear in the movie and also to gain credits. We were telling the gamers, you support us, and therefore we reward you and we highlight your role. So that's what we've done with the video game, with the movie, and also using the content, because talking about participation, you need to tell a story to have an original content, be it user-generated or generated by yourself. So in the end, the content and the fans, they gather in your event. Yeah, we organize some narrative contents or pixel art contents, which are very important. And the second, regarding the story, the plot, we have a figure, a character in the video game, which is also represented in the series and in the comics. So you can follow this figure, this character, and you can bind relationship on, identify with it. This is our target. In order to engage the audience and to bring them to participate, we want to use those characters that are present in the comics, in the games, and in the movies. How do you bring the people to vote? For example, I think about this, but I don't tell my broadcaster. I expect from him to tell me first what we are going to do if we have no gamers, and then I tell him, this is your work, my good friend. Do you have a plan B? No, it has to be risky too, but our first plan, our plan A, was as robust as possible. I was earlier on talking about the practical movie and the theater. What we want to do at the moment is to create an area, to create an audience, to create a local community. When I was mentioning this Canadian ONF project, I was mentioning the fact that the target was to have a project that is that is working as good as possible. We needed a larger amount of players, otherwise it wouldn't have been operating. Do we have questions in the audience? Do we have committed people here, engaged people here? Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background? Good morning, my name is Eric Payet. I'm working at a Zeferte production company. We're looking at the moment at the cross-media content. Coming back to the reward, isn't there a danger when you are starting a process in order to engage your audience? Isn't there a danger that maybe you can lessen the motivation of all those who do not manage to engage their audience? This is a very interesting question. We saw it happening in the examples of contests, fine arts contests, where people had to draw new characters, and those gamers who cannot draw, well, they were excluded from the very start from the contest. So it is important to manage to differentiate between audience segments in order to clearly target the expectation that they have. And this is why I was telling you about those specific settings dedicated to new players or experienced players, and this differentiation is very important. We need to have a targeted and a specifically adapted speech when talking to them. Another question, Michael?
Just an answer. One of the tenets of Silicon Valley and technology is fail quickly and fail often. And you don't want to spend a lot of time trying to figure out whether you have an audience. And if you do something and it fails, it's not a problem. You just learn and you go in a different direction. So having the ability to learn quickly is, I think, a very, very important element. It's called pivoting or changing. So I think it's extremely valuable information, the fact that you failed. That's not negative at all. That's just the reality of day-to-day life.
Well, if you have a very big budget and you fail, it's quite a problem.
But you shouldn't be spending a big budget before you've tested everything.
Non, je voudrais juste prolonger sur ce que dit monsieur. Moi, je suis d'accord avec vous parce
Coming back to the question in the audience, I agree on what you said, because we see that people try to include rewarding events in any project, and this might sometimes be a kind of veil in order to hide the fact that the story is not working. I'm not talking about the game, I'm talking about these other projects that are using a gaming method it is not about encouraging the player to further play in order to hide the lack of a narrative talent. So this mechanism of rewarding is not going to be operating if you do not reward an interesting process and if the reward doesn't provide access to an interesting issue. I very often draw the comparison between the internet and children. One concept is very well working on children. It is called instant gratification, instant reward. You get very quickly 1, 2, or 3 stars, and then if you fail, you see a small character that is crying or that is happy if you win, which stimulates you to start again, not necessarily to move on to the next step, but to start again. If you say that there's a hindrance at the entrance, we need maybe some stimulating element in order to encourage you to further play. Of course, for other types of content and serious games, the idea is not that you want to have fun. You need to calculate in a very smart way the way in which you grant rewards. Do we have other questions? I have a questions. On a very topical projects that are ending at some point, how do you manage the end of this relationship with the audience? It might be generating frustration. You might have some players who are unhappy with that and dissatisfied. Do you have an expiracy date on your website? No, because we are a media website and we will keep existing as long as demand will be here. But both of you have to deal with this issue because you're working on campaigns and on timely limited projects. For the project Follow-up Money, we had 2 versions. One was very hot, so as to say, with participating viewers. And later on, I would like to expand a little bit on the word of engagement. The second version enabled you to further play, but was not encompassing those debates, so that you could further play without needing a supportive team to feed in the game. So this is your past experience. At the end of some projects or at the end of some games, when we had lesser resources available, it happened to have some communities remaining and maintaining the debate on their own and from themselves. But in the end, this was only possible when we left the server and the game opened. Sometimes we had to manage a few very sad situations because a strong relationship had emerged between the gamer and the game. So we need to answer those questions. Of course, engagement is an interesting concept, but we need to bring answers. It's not only about having a discussion, otherwise you're talking to a wall. Exchanging, sharing is important. So we mentioned the end, but the beginning is also important. When I, for the first time, visited Follow-up Money, I saw that it was taking a long time. And when I was recommending this website to other persons, they would tell me that they just abandoned because it was taking too long. They had to spend times and to spend hours and days in order to master it. So do you have a warning tool in order to warn the people that it is going to last a long time? Well, this is major difficulty indeed. If your people spend 20 minutes on the website, that was already a good result. We are following the same rule earlier mentioned of 90, 10, and 1 and 9%. We have a difficulty with this timeline. Unlike a movie theater, TV a show, or other content, we know when you get into a cinema, you know how long you're going to stay there and how long the film is going to last. So in order to help our gamers assessing the time spent, we used some benchmarks, such as, for example, telling the gamer you've been meeting that many characters or spending that much time. I draw lessons from my experience at Ubisoft. I come from Montreal, and this aspect is part of the screenwriting of games. We haven't solved the issue now. I was talking about a veer earlier on, but this might be also a love killer, because if you have an indicator of the time on the bottom of your screen, which is similar to the one you can find on YouTube, then this is really deadly in my view. So we need to find a system in order to reassure the audience.
I just want to make a sort of an oblique, but I think a very relevant comment. I spend a lot of time trying to look at where the money is coming from, because at the end of the day, we all need money to fund what we're doing. And as the internet is enabling content and stories to become more and more hyper-local, it's enabling content to become more and more hyper-local, and the hundreds of billions of dollars of network television and broadcasting and advertising is starting to go into local. So if you go into your content and you have gamification of specific things, there are beginning to be possibilities. So if you're creating a movie or a film about jewelry making, you could actually go to, in Prague, an advertiser in the jewelry business and ask them to sponsor something in Czech so you could create a whole new audience of monetization through sponsorship of successful efforts that are going online, and we're beginning to experiment with these types of things. So it's the whole hundreds of billions of dollars of advertising and sponsorship is dramatically at risk, and all of these new digital technologies are enabling new ways to create revenue for different kinds of gamification in various different micro categories.
Alors une question qui peut sembler un peu froide, mais on le dit souvent, audience.
This might be seem to be a rather cold question, but people, or a very harsh question, but people very often say that audience is the new money. When you're working on your audience, are you aware of the fact that you are also dealing with a kind of budget and amount of money, and that if you have a poor project, you will have difficulties to fund the next project? For back money, how many users did you get? Less than 600,000. So if you can gather 600,000 viewers on a web documentary, of course it makes it easier for the next steps. Well, I don't think of it in terms of monetization, money, and so on. You have money, so it's not an issue to you. Well, I have some for my projects, but it's very interesting to me to listen to my neighbors who are talking about product, about advertising, about marketing. This is their the way they conceive engaging, but I'm rather related to this very notion from the 1970s of committed cinema, cinéma engagé, which means that I am not only a director who's very much committed into his project, but I have a common commitment, a common ideologic issue with my audience. And spending time viewing a web documentary is a form of commitment from my audience too. This is a decision that you make. And this is why the word engagement, commitment to me is important, because we're not only dealing with a connection via Facebook. It's similar to the meaning of the word friend on Facebook, which has a different meaning on Facebook and on real life. I am very lucky and have the opportunity to work with public fundings, which means that the need of a return on investment and also on audience is not as high as you could think. Of course, we want to gain audience. We don't want to remain in our very small networks and circles, as would some contemporary dance companies, for example. So we come up with ideas that then may be reflected via the entire industry. We still have 2 or 5 minutes, so maybe you can answer this, and then we will have another question from the audience. We don't think our audience mostly as a source of monetization. Of course, we know that we have economic priorities, we need to manage budgets and resources, but I was talking about our fans and our gamers. We don't call them customers or clients. I had meetings at your companies and we were talking about clients. How do you define your position? Well, I am in charge of managing the customer relationship. So you mentioned the C word. Well, this is my technical word. This is the job description. But if you look at the teams, at the tone of the exchange and the dialogue and the way we speak, we are managing communities. We are community managers. This is really one part I'm in charge of, and I'm also managing the customer services. So we consider our communities as a source of information, of innovation and creation. They will bring ideas to us and provide us with directions to take for the game design, and we will get them involved in testing the beta versions. We invite in our headquarters many times a year the best gamers, the most experienced players, and we have roundtables, panel discussions. We also shoot a short documentary in order to pass this on to the community, to tell them that we're listening to them and that we consider our community as a source of information and innovation. Bastien? Well, for us, our audience has always been at the heart of our concerns. Since the very onset of the project, we agreed on the fact that advertising was boring and was annoying to the users. How can you manage this economically? How do you survive? Well, we try to identify the right advertisers, and then they are added to our contents, not in the form of pop-ups or topical conventional advertisings. We start a story together with a brand. A brand comes to us, and if we have the feeling that we can start something together, you mean you can start a monetary exchange? Well, also, I mean, if you have the feeling that something can happen between you, it's not only about kissing each other. Well, that's right. Even on the internet, it is very difficult to talk about money. We know that this is the vital issue, but we need a budget in order to provide a certain level of quality. We try to create engaging contact together with the brands and for the brands. Another question from the audience? Good morning, my name is Olivier Gela. I'm a consultant in marketing. I've been working a long time in the movie industry, and I would like to come back to one question that was asked earlier dealing with engagement and rewarding. I'm asking whether rewards might not be poison and lead to an exaggeration. Shouldn't we think about engaging the audience using less rewards? My answer is no, but we'll discuss that later on. Maintaining awarding mechanisms and incentives is vital, but we all, of course, need to consider the psychology of the player who may get bored and who may find similar mechanisms at other places or in other brands, and therefore we see how necessary it is to invite the audience, to talk to them, to build together in a collaborative way new methods via ambassador circles and other dedicated forms enabling such kind of exchange. We need to find new settings in order to get the user involved in the building of the game and not only using a very simple rewarding method.
critical that the reward be designed and customized for the specific product. It doesn't have to be money, it doesn't have to be a product. It could be sending him on a trip to a conference or introducing him to some. The reward should be something that's exactly representative of what the game is or what the media is that they would like, that has elegance and simplicity, that is specifically related to the people that you're trying to attract and motivate. So it doesn't have necessarily anything to do with anything specific.
Voilà, alors nous sommes au bout de cette conférence. Je voudrais remercier tous nos panélistes.
We are at the end of this panel. Thank you very much, Michael, Michel, David, and Bastien. Thank you very much for remaining that calm. And the audience, we could have a nice discussion on the panel. Talking about myself, I am representing here Wallimage Federation, Wallonia, Brussels. We are involved in funding cross-media international projects, so please come and talk to us. We will be here today at a debate later on this morning. We thank the Cross Video Days. Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you, gentlemen. This was a very interesting debate. Wrapping up this session dedicated to audience engagement, I call on stage Baptiste Planche, co-founder of Control Movie.
Bonjour Baptiste.
Good morning, Baptiste. You are going to show to us a tool, as David said to us earlier on. The web is a wonderful broadcasting tool, but maybe also a tool for creation. So he launched a very interesting creative tool. Tell us more about this. With a Control Movie, we enable the audience to have an impact on the development of the plot of a movie, of a story. Most importantly, the movie should be of a high quality and high level. This is our project. Thank you. Baptiste, you have the floor.
Bon, alors le format, la plateforme, la technologie.
Our platform, our technology is entitled Control Movie. This is also the name of a startup. Our company, we are located in Zurich, in Switzerland. Our activity is mainly in English, and this is why I will have this presentation in English.
Control Movie is based on a concept of choose your own adventure, like many other projects are in the world of interactivity. Our main objective in what we do is to create an experience which should always be very cinematic. So we are talking about film, movies, le cinéma. And the good thing about it is that it's things you like to watch, you can watch. And I brought something with me on my iPad, which we should show now and see now soon, which I would like to show you, so that you have an impression. Could we change to the iPad, please? Thank you. So what I'm showing you is an app. It's a prototype, so I really hope it won't crash, because this would be very embarrassing for me. It's a pilot production which we produced 2 years ago. Now we will jump right into the action of the movie. There is a guy, which you will see there. He has to take decisions, and I will take decisions on his behalf by pushing some buttons, which you will see at the bottom end of the screen here. So pay attention to the bottom end and the buttons, because it will be really swift, like in real life.
No is the correct answer, but is it the right decision?
Only for tonight. I'll be back before 2.
Can't do it. It's more than my job's worth.
So you're a good boy. Shame. Didn't you ever steal a sweet from a sweet shop?
Not sweets that expensive.
I promise I will bring it back.
Why the hell do you need his car?
You don't need to worry about that.
Okay, I won't.
Okay, I made a bet. A stupid bet. I said I'd turn up at this party in a red Ferrari.
That was a bit rash. How much was the bet?
$1,000.
$1,000. That's so mental, I'm actually impressed.
100 of it is yours if you let me have those keys.
200.
Okay.
300.
But
You said yes to 200 too quickly. Better to be 700 up than $1,000 down. I'm trusting you, that's not free.
200 tonight, in cash.
Tonight, in cash.
I'm good for it.
So now that you have a first impression of what the experience is like, I would like to give you some more information what the whole project is about. We have different platforms which we are on. The one are handheld devices, which you saw right now, where you interact directly on the device you're looking at the content. Then we also go to cinema theaters, where you watch the movie on the big screen, and you decide on your mobile device in your hand, so second screen, and there will be a majority vote. Then we have something similar for your home, for your sofa, for IPTV set-top boxes or HBB-TV technology. You again watch the thing on the screen in your living room and decide on your smartphone device. Now to our positioning. We are somewhere between film and games, but we see ourselves clearly on the film side of things. It's slight interaction, and to the opposite of games, which aspire to be very cinematic. Some of them are, like Beyond Two Souls, for instance, but it's still computer-generated, and what we want is real people shot with a real camera. So we position ourselves on the side of films. Then there are other more open source platforms, web-based, like Interlude, for instance. They're doing amazing things, but what we're aiming at is a higher production value. We believe that we only want selected people, we only want them to do control movies and not the big public, because I think it should have a certain quality in it. Now coming back to the features, the one you saw with taking decisions, with the buttons, I mean, this is no rocket science. But I think what is new with our thing, actually our main USP, is that the playback is seamless across decision points with no gaps or jittering. It's almost frame accurate, and as far as we know, this hasn't existed before. Actually, there is only one second feature which we use, which enables you to interact further. You can interact with objects you see in the film, screens, again, phone devices or keypads or things like that. But we don't want to use it too much. We only use it when it really makes sense and when it's like fits into the story and makes sense for the story. We tried out. We could technically we could have more gamification, more gamey elements, but I think it really takes you away from the cinematic film experience. When we did this pilot production you saw, we played around with it and tried out different things to know better what the experience actually is, because now we're spending a lot of money on a project and we want to know what we exactly can achieve with it. And we have some guidelines in place now. One of them is there are no game over moments in what we do. You want to stay in this film, you don't want the film to stop. So really we stay with this film, no game over, no loops. Then also no choice is still a choice. If I don't push the button, life or the film will decide for me. It's like in real life, if you don't take a decision, it's still a decision. This decision can be random, by a random generator, or it's something that we have predefined because we feel it's the way you have to go if you don't take a decision and take over the responsibility. Then, very important, relevance of choices. We think we have to be very honest with the audience. If they take decisions, they have to have consequences, they have to be relevant. Sometimes, most of the time, you see it immediately what happens. You take a decision, choice made, something happens, it has an impact. Sometimes the impact is only much later on in the story. For instance, in what we watched, you have this girl with the key. You can give her the key. If you give her the key, later on she will help you. If you don't give her the key, she will not help you. Then, very important in general, we think we have, if we want to create something cinematic, we have to stick to the rules of filmmaking and cinematic storytelling. So we have to take character development serious. We think we found a nice way to deal with it. We call it the pyramidal model, and I'm happy to share it with those of you guys who are really interested in it. So come to me and I will explain more about that. After this proof of concept we did, now it's the point where we're working on the proof of market. We're producing the first feature-length film in this format. So it means that feature-length, if you play it through, you will have more or less 100 minutes. It comes sliced in episodes. We have 13 episodes. You will see most of them when you game through the movie. We are producing this right now in London, 8 weeks shoot. We're today in the 4th week of shooting. It's an intelligent heist thriller, so the genre is a thriller, a heist, about the power of choices, decisions and consequences. We will be ready by the end of 2015, by the end of this year, for releasing it. We will have exclusive interactive cinema screenings at film festivals, in selected cinemas, and it will be available on the App Store. So my first call to action for you guys is that you should follow @lateshift_movie on Twitter, and you will always stay informed about the release, and you will be able to download the app from the App Store. A little bit more information on that. We have the distribution on the App Store. You download the app, it comes with the first episode for free. If you like it, you can buy the whole rest of it for more or less $10 or 10 Swiss francs, the whole feature film, or you buy episode by episode, as you'd like. So we have this paywall installed here. Then we have revenues, hopefully. 30% will go to Apple, 10% goes to Control Movie for the technology, and then 60% go to the producers of the film project and their investors. And I think this is quite an interesting aspect of our project. It's a new way of distribution, and in comparison to traditional ways, I think it's quite attractive. Then, of course, we have the traditional distribution ways. We also, as mentioned, we can show it on IPTV, HBBTV, etc. in an interactive way, interactively in cinemas. So we have distribution, but we can also make like just one linear version of the film, which we will do. We can broadcast this on TV, DVD, VOD, everything. So next call to action. If you work in one of those fields, please come to me if you're interested in learning more what we have to offer, because we have to offer some things for festivals, cinemas, interactive screenings, for IPTV, HBBTV platforms, interactive content for your platform. By the way, we are shooting in 4K, so if you're interested in 4K, we have something to offer. And then, of course, TV, DVD, VOD, if you're interested in showing a project like this in its linear version and do some communication work around it, we're open to that. On the longer term, I mean, everything I told you until now is actually for this proof of market we want to do. We would like to to convince people that there is an audience for what we are doing, that people are willing to watch it and pay the money that it is worth, I hope. And if we're more or less successful with it, I think there will be other producers wanting to do that. We're completely open to that. We would like to share the technology we have created with selected third-party filmmakers. We have created an authoring tool which allows you to do the whole authoring at the end of post-production, and we will give this to you free of charge. And then we have this monetization which I mentioned, where we take a part of the revenues. So the last and third call to action from my side is to producers of film content. There is a new distribution way, it's attractive. Come and talk to me. Authors, we think we found an interesting way or interesting solutions how to make interactive storytelling possible. It's about multi-branch storytelling, multi-optional storytelling. We learned some things, we are happy to share that with you if you want to create content, if you want to write respective content. And then in very general, all filmmakers of any kind who are interested in doing this, come to us, we're open, we provide you what you need, be it in our sharing our learnings or the technology. We think we're on something interesting. We believe it will be fun, and we are happy to have other people on board doing it. We believe in it, and we had some people who should know it from the film industry telling us that it is something new, it has not been done before, and that it will probably be great. So, like always in life, it's your choice. I made my calls to action. I'm happy to talk to you if you're interested in learning more or exchanging. Thank you very much for your attention.
Merci beaucoup, Baptiste.
Thank you very much, Baptiste. This is the end of our first session on engaging digital audiences. We have a very short break, and then we are going to talk about international co-production for digital content. So 11:30, and then see you back here at 11:30. Have a good coffee break. Bye.